It's easy to panic and it's easy to feel like it's just you and you're failing, but you're not. How do we quieten the noise and just get really focused on some of the core things that will actually be able to help us generate a result, instead of spinning our wheel trying to do all these blooming things and just feeling so exhausted and drained by it all? What do we actually need to do? What is actually going to get us the result today? I've had so many conversations with people over the past year of people feeling so exhausted, so drained, so frustrated. So many people feeling like, oh, why isn't this working? Or feeling like this used to work really well, now it's not working. Or just feeling like launching's got harder, or launching isn't really working anymore, or just it's just not working in general, and they're just really struggling. And I think this is such an important conversation to have, because so many people are experiencing this right now. So many people are having a really hard time right now. So if you are feeling that way, you are absolutely not alone. And I want to share with you some insights from a mastermind that I was at recently. I've actually got my notebook with me, and I am going to read you some of the notes that I made on day 2 of that mastermind when a conversation came up. We were having a group chat about how, the majority of people, I don't want to say everyone, because I'm sure there's some people that are doing completely great, but there are, I think for the majority of people, there has been struggle, there has been frustration. And somebody in the mastermind shared something that I thought was so interesting. And I really want to share my notes with you on this. I just want to read from my notes, because this conversation, was just so interesting to me. So she said, "We have been on the upside of the S-bend for the past 10 years, and now we're on the downside. We're in a downslope. It's time to rewrite how we do things." And then I wrote down, it takes 5 times as much effort to get the same results. How many, have you felt like this? Have you felt like, oh my gosh, this used to feel like so much easier. How is it now I'm doing 5 times as much work to try and just scrape through the amount of results that I used to get? I know I see a lot of people struggle with that. I wrote down, now is the time to experiment, to test, to be more creative, to spot what's coming next. An upturn is coming. We have to have the foresight to look for the opportunities. I think that's so important. We have to have the foresight to look for the opportunities. I think as entrepreneurs, that is one of the biggest skill sets we have to have. We have to be able to, even though when we're in a struggle, even when it's challenging, we have to kind of keep our eyes wide open for, the opportunities, because they're still there. They're just maybe looking a little bit different. And then the conversation kind of evolved into this next part where we said, we need to think more about the outcomes we're getting for people. People feel overwhelmed and they want to get outcomes faster, the fastest path. Streamlining our businesses, our marketing offers, now is the time to make those changes. There's also an explosion of tools we use: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Signal, Pinterest, WhatsApp, Slack. People feel strung out by all the ways they have to communicate with people, another group, another platform, another community, even the overwhelm of streaming platforms like Netflix, Disney, and all of those platforms. And then the type of content like reels, posts, stories, DMs, it's exhausting. And I feel like for myself, when I look back even to 5 years ago, the way we communicated about our businesses online was so much more simple. You could just put a post out on Instagram and that would be enough. But if you look at Instagram now, you have stories, you have obviously DMs, you have broadcast channels, you have reels, you've got videos, you've got carousels, you've got posts, you've got so many blooming things just on one platform. And then, bloody hell, they've gone and sodding released Threads. And Then you've got Facebook and you've got Facebook groups and people are saying like, but the Facebook communities are dying a death and there's just nothing going on in them and it's like crickets and it's just like, do I even bother having one anymore? And then you've got obviously all these other platforms, you've got TikTok, and it's not even just about the volume of platforms, it's about the volume of features that are now being rolled out on those platforms, on so many of them. And it is exhausting and it feels like a lot, because what used to feel like a fairly straightforward, simple task to communicate your business now feels like your entire blooming job, because you've got to think of all these different fancy ways to do it. And it is a lot. And I was really glad to have this conversation when I was in Dallas at this mastermind, because I myself have felt this like questioning it all. Like, what is this all for? Like, this is just so much to try and keep up with. And not only that, but like when you're now, for example, doing a launch or, whatever it is, or even just communicating as a team, it's like there are so many different ways, there are so many different channels to communicate with people through. And even, for example, from a support side, for our business on the support side, people can message us on WhatsApp, people send us messages on Facebook, people send us messages on Instagrams, people send us emails, we have live chat, and it's just like, oh my gosh, there's just so many things. And it's just, again, like, it just becomes overwhelming. And so I think that, in combination with being on the downside of the S bend, being in this place where the economy has completely changed and it is a struggle. And it's not only that, the world is in a really weird place. It's not only the economy, it's the wars that are happening. It's the discrimination that's happening. There's just so many things on so many different levels that have been happening, and it is kind of just makes this a very uncertain, unstable time, and I think everyone is feeling that. And so obviously on top of that, when your business feels like it's just not as easy anymore, or it's hard, or it's challenging, you're trying to put all this effort in, it just can get a bit much. So I wanted to make this episode to talk about this, because I feel like, one, you're not alone. Like, I have experienced the struggles and the frustrations. From my perspective, stuff that used to work, to be completely transparent, I remember doing my first launch of my membership when it was an actual open enrollment launch. We got 1,200 people to join in a week. And then we do launches where we get 1,600 people to join in a week. And if we did a launch now, following what we used to do, now we wouldn't get anywhere near that. So times have changed so much. And it's about looking at how do we need to change to evolve with it all. And that means experimenting. And sometimes when you experiment, you get it wrong. So, for example, this year we've experimented and done things, and sometimes it's gone really wrong. We did something earlier on, for example, this year, and it felt like we were pulling teeth. It was like, this is not going well. This is not landing. This is just frustrating. And I know that I've had so many conversations with other people who experienced the exact same thing. But sometimes when you're in it and you're like, oh my gosh, it's just me, what's going on? Why is it not working? It's easy to panic, and it's easy to feel like it's just you and you're failing, but you're not. It's just that, times are changing. So if we know this, and we know that it's hard, and we know that industry, everything is feeling quite hard and a bit of a struggle, what can we do about it? And so this is the question that I ask myself. And because the thing is, you can't just stand still. You have to think about what needs to change and how we can do things differently. So the number one question I ask myself is, how can I make this easier for myself? How can I simplify? Because like I said, things have got so overwhelming, there's so much. It's how do we quieten the noise and just get really focused on some of the core things that will actually be able to help us generate a result, instead of spinning our wheels trying to do all these blooming things and just feeling so exhausted and drained by it all. What do we actually need to do? What is actually going to get us the result today? So I want to share with you just a few things, a few ideas that you could take on board to help you if you are also feeling this struggle. So like I said, the first thing that I have been asking, like I said, is how do I simplify this? How do I make it easier? And when you think about simplifying, one of the things I've been looking at is how can I make, social media feel easier? How can I reduce the overwhelm there? And for example, like if you don't have a team of people, maybe it's just looking at, I'm just going to go all in on one platform and just forget trying to be everywhere. Or like, what is an easy way to repurpose my content, knowing that I'm really creating it for this one platform, but I will repurpose it on other platforms. Like, how can you make it easy for yourself so that it's not so exhausting, so it's not so overwhelming? How could you make it easy to batch create content? How could you make it easy so that you're not just constantly feeling like trying to keep up with all the things? Not only that, looking at the tools that you use, like how can you streamline the tools you use? How can that be less overwhelming? Like even maybe you're trying to work on too many different strategies and doing too many different things. And maybe that's because it's like this panic of, well, nothing's bloody working, so I'm just going to try loads of different things. But it's like, maybe it's just looking at how do you simplify that so that you can create that focus so that you do feel a bit more in control, and a bit more, it feels a bit easier, because otherwise it gets exhausting. So I think it's time to like clean up, do a cleanup, strip it back and ask yourself, how can I make my business easier? And if you start asking yourself that question, you start finding different answers, because I think sometimes when times are hard, it's easy for us to kind of get into this mantra, this like almost hypnotize ourselves by saying like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. This is so exhausting. I feel so drained. I feel so stuck. I feel stuck. I feel stuck. I feel stuck. And we end up like hypnotizing ourselves with the wording, the language that we're using. And actually when you flip that and you start to ask yourself questions like, how can this be easier? How can this be easier? How can this be easier? How can I get this to flow more? How can I get this to flow more? All of a sudden, your brain starts looking for different ways for how to bring that into your life. And so you start spotting things that you can do that can actually make a difference. So for me, looking at that and asking myself that question, how do I simplify? How do I make this easier? And giving myself those powerful questions to constantly ponder on and ask myself so that I get answers that are going to be better than the answers I ask myself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is draining. This is exhausting. Like, that's not really going to get me anywhere. So that's the first thing. The second thing I really think is now is a time to be creative and to experiment. Now is the time to throw everything out the window that's not working and to be creative and to look at new ideas and new ways of doing things and just have fun playing. I've always believed this. I believe that every single person who has a business, you are an experimenter. You are somebody who's there to investigate and to dissect and to experiment. Everything is an experiment. We do not know what's going to work. And sometimes things work and then all of a sudden they just stop working. When I built my first business, it was phone unlocking. And at first we used Google AdWords and it worked really, really well. And then it stopped working because the market became like more crowded. So then we had to figure out what do we need to change? And so we started to do SEO. And then it's like, it changes and evolves. Like everything is constantly changing and evolving. And we have to be able to adapt and change with it. If you're not adapting and changing, then it's going to be hard. So, and I think from my perspective, I look at this and I try and keep this fun and light and easy for myself. Otherwise, again, it gets overwhelming. But it's like, it's sometimes just even might be reading a book that might spark a new idea or a new way of doing things so that you can get that creativity or you can experiment with something. But it's hard to be creative and experiment when you are stuck in that place of like, this feels so hard, everything's not working. Well, yeah, it's going to keep being that way. But it's like, for example, when I do launches and they don't work or whatever, I always think, what is the gold here that I can sift out of this disastrous launch or whatever? What can I find here that will give me answers that will help me to move forward? And looking at how can I have done this differently? How can I do this differently? And it's often in those moments where it's just really hard and frustrating that I will have a real breakthrough in the way I think, and I'll have like a creative idea that's so random that then goes on to work because it forces me to actually be my most creative self. So allow yourself to go there, allow yourself to be creative, allow yourself to experiment, innovate, come up with new ideas, try different things, allow yourself to rewrite your offers or create new ones. Maybe it's time to rewrite it. Like I put in my notes, people feel overwhelmed. They want outcomes faster, the fastest path. Maybe it's about rewriting what you do. Maybe it's about changing it. Obviously, I know we all offer different things, but maybe it's looking at that and looking at what could change. How could you look at things differently or do things differently? So that's the second thing, be creative, experiment. The third thing, and I think this is so important, surround yourself with like-minded people where you can share ideas, you can talk about this stuff, you can see what is actually working for people, what is not actually working for people. And even that in itself, it's so comforting, and it makes you feel like, one, you're not alone, and two, it does spark a new energy and a new excitement. And even in those frustrating, struggling times, when you get around the right people, they can light you up so that you feel hopeful and that you feel, actually, there's a way through this, and I will get through it, and I can get through it, and I'm going to get through it. So find those people and surround yourself with them. Obviously, you're welcome. Come into our family, come into our online world of female entrepreneurs, and we'd love to have you if you're not already part of our community. So come in. I'll leave details in the show notes for you, but be part of spaces where, like I said, you're surrounded by like-minded people who are going to help you to move forward. The fourth thing, learn and grow. I think when times are difficult, it's a really good time to learn and grow and listen and take on new ideas. So for me, I have been reading books. I have been going on different webinars and just learning. I think we all need to give ourselves permission to do that, and just listening to what other people are talking about. And again, it's not like some things work for other people and they don't work for others. So it's not like a one size fits all thing. But I do find that when it's hard, it's easy to go into that place where you panic and think nothing's going to work. And from that place, it's hard to make anything really great happen when you're just stuck in that space. But when you kind of break out of that and you actually think, I'm going to find some answers. There are answers. There is a way forward. I'm going to find it. And you open yourself up to the possibilities. You open yourself up to the opportunities. You open yourself up to learn. I think that's where the magic can be found. So open yourself up to that and keep that open, almost like that open heart of, I will find my way through this, and I can do this. And I know it might feel hard right now, but I can find where is the breakthrough that I can have, and just kind of looking for that. And like I said, then experimenting with those new ideas and those new things and that you're seeing. I do also really believe that it's often in the hardest times, like I said before, where we can have the biggest breakthroughs, because it can force us to, it can either make us completely retreat, or it can actually make us roll up our sleeves and be like, I am here for this. I am here to figure this out. I am here to break through, because I am here to live my best life, to build the business of my dreams. And I am going to find a way through this. Throughout my life, my dad has been such a big inspiration to me. And I have seen him go through, and he's always, not always, but he's built businesses. And so I've watched as he's had these highs and lows, and I've watched him keep going and keep going and keep going. And sometimes it means one business journey comes to an end and another one begins. I've witnessed that over and over again. And I've witnessed that for myself as well. Sometimes it means that you've come to the end of one thing because it's time to evolve to the next thing that you want to actually get on and do. So maybe that is your time now. Maybe you've been doing something and it's not working. And maybe it's because, everything's happening for a reason, and you're ready for the next step, and you're ready for the next business adventure. I don't know, who knows, why things happen. Anyway, I hope that you've really found this helpful. Like I said, I'll leave some links for you in the show notes if you want to come and join us. We would love to have you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and if you need anything, we are here for you, so please don't hesitate to get in touch. And I'll see you next week for another episode of the She Means Business Show.